In this video, I'm looking at the Rimewyrm's Bite Rivals deck. Hello AOS fans, Robin here with the second of our Wintermaw videos, specifically aimed at the Rivals decks. As I said in the previous video for the Hungering Parasite deck, do go check that out. This is the Rimewyrm's Bite Rivals deck. We've only just got these and we haven't really had time to use them and play them, but I'm just going to do a quite quick rundown through them and see what I think of them. I didn't think very much of this when I first saw it, and then I was having a conversation with somebody, not specifically about this deck, but about some rumours they'd heard about it, I thought, well, I didn't look at it in that light. I kind of quickly glanced through it. So Hungering Parasite here, which I've been through, very control-y, Bane of Heroes, moving about, all that kind of thing. The Rimewyrm's Bite deck, control-y too. You're controlling the environment, you're controlling the space in which this kind of worm thing, almost like somebody's been reading and watching Dune when they designed it, under the ice, comes up, smashing up, chunks people down, spits them out, freezes bits of it. That's what this is all about. There's no plot card, which is quite good. Well, there is a plot card, obviously, in the Bane of Heroes, in the Hungering Parasite deck. So I haven't done any notes on this. I've just decided, having read through it a second time on the Thursday before we were allowed to go live with the publication stuff, that I'm going to do a deck on this, a video on this one as well. So it'll probably be even less polished than the Bane of Videos. Bane of Videos? I am the Bane of Videos. Bane of Heroes, Hungering Parasite deck. But, Bane of Videos, you see. Do let me know what you think. Do let me know what you think of these cards. I'm going to go quickly run through them, so I haven't really done them in any order or plan or anything. So we're just going to go through them and see what we think. Oh, I wish I'd brought a drink out. We will go through the surges first, however. And so there are no two glory surges for this deck either. So we've got Ruinous Aftermath. Score this immediately after a friendly domain card was discarded as a result of another domain card being played. As you will see when I go through the power cards, there are lots and lots of domains in this deck. So that, if you're playing it, will be very easy to score. Subterranean Threat. Surge Duel. Score this immediately after an activation step if one or more enemy fighters were taken out of action in that step and those enemy fighters had no move or charge tokens. Could be really easy to score. It's like a easier to score version of that card where you have to take somebody out in the first person to be taken out in a round, because it doesn't matter if you do it later as long as they haven't moved. It's pretty easy to score. Threatening Rumbles. Yes, it's nearly dinner time. Score this immediately after a fighter on an objective token in enemy territory was dealt damage by your Warband's power card. We will see, there are ways to do that. And it is only dealt damage, but they do have to be on an objective token, but you know, maybe you can make that happen, we'll have to see. Gone Without a Trace. Score this immediately after a fighter was taken out of action by damage dealt by your Warband's power card. If that fighter was an enemy fighter and the damage was dealt by a friendly domain card, gain one additional glory point. So we might see some domain cards that could do a bit of damage. You've got a potential of scoring 2 glory. So there is a 1 glory surge, but there is a chance of a 2 glory. So that is slightly better version, I think. So Gone Without a Trace, a slightly better version of Threatening Rumbles, because they have to be on an objective token in order for you to score that. With this one, they don't, but then maybe there are specific cards in here which will damage people on objective tokens. We shall see. Deadly to All. Score this immediately after an activation step or power step in which 2 or more fighters were each dealt damage. Sounds pretty tricky on the face of it. Let's have a look what tech there is again. So I'm going to be looking at a lot of tech when we get into these upgrades. I'm hoping to God it's in there. Get Moving. That's what you're all thinking watching me. Surge Hybrid. Score this immediately after an activation step if each friendly fighter has 1 or more move tokens or each friendly fighter has 1 or more charge tokens. Well, we see these cards a lot. 1 Glory Surge. Not great for Horde warbands, great for Elite warbands. And maybe there's ways of adding charge tokens and things too. But, you know, scoreable late game by most people. Let's have a look at the non-surge cards. You've got 5 at 2 for 10 glory, so 16, 17 glory for this deck. We'll do the 1 glory card, the easy scorer card. Score this in fade if there are no adjacent fighters. If each friendly fighter is not in friendly territory, when you score this card, gain 1 additional glory point. So you can lift that up to 2 as well. It's called Spread Out. Very scoreable, I think. For 1 glory, though, you do have to get into enemy territory to score it for 2. It's not as good as the, I think there's a Force of Frost one, isn't there? I think that's 2 glory for anywhere on the board. Get out of the way. Score this at end phase if there are more friendly fighters in enemy territory than enemy fighters. It's going to depend on, I'm very matchup dependent, that one. Never punished. Score this at end phase if there are fewer friendly fighters that have one or more wound counters than there are enemy fighters that have one or more wound counters. So if you're doing well, quite healthy, then never punish is reasonably easy to score. Nowhere to run. Score this at end phase if two or more surviving enemy fighters are each within 1 hex of one or more lethal hexes and or one or more snare hexes. Corralled like sheep. Score this at end phase if each surviving enemy fighter is in the same territory. Now I quite like this one because you may remember if you've played against Breakneck Slaughter or Tooth and Claw, I think they've got a card for having everybody in your half and nobody in their half, and it's 3 glory, I think. If you've got Corralled like sheep in your deck, you could score 2. So the net gain is only 1. So I quite like that. Blood-soaked ice. Score this at end phase if each enemy fighter is out of action and or has one or more wound counters. So I'm definitely getting the feeling we need a way of distributing wounds amongst your opponent's fighters, even if you're not taking them out, because again against a Horde Warband that's quite tricky to score. So let's look at the ploys then. We've got brief emergence. Choose a fighter, stagger the chosen fighter and push the chosen fighter 1 hex. Then pick an opponent. That opponent could choose another fighter, push the chosen fighter 1 hex and then deal 1 damage to that fighter. So that seems on the face of it like quite a bad deal, because you can push a fighter and then they can push a fighter, but they get to damage you and you only get to stagger them. So it's a really interesting card, I think, that, because staggering can be great, can be really good if you're about to come in like with quite a high dice attack. It can be useful, and or even a low dice attack. But you have got that risk of you've got to take a damage. Okay, the first of the domains. In fact, let's go through all the domains. So there are actually 6 domains in this deck. He says count them. Yes, 6 domains. You've got deadly wards. So, NHS jokes not needed. Starting hexes and hexes that contain objective tokens are lethal hexes in addition to other hex types. This effect persists until a lethal hex deals damage to a fighter, until the end of the round or until another domain gambit is played. So basically, starting hexes and... So there's quite a lot of lethal hexes suddenly flying all around the board. The main problem, like I said, with this card is forgetting that's going on, and then just forgetting that you have played it and people just running through hexes and being lethal and you're not taking damage. But could be mayhem, that card. Heaving Ground. Another domain, obviously. After an activation step in which one or more staggered fighters are driven back, deal 1 damage to each of the staggered fighters. This effect persists until the end of the round or until the domain gambit is played. So again, this is where staggering fighters is going to come in useful. So maybe that's where this card, where you can stagger them, you could still, if you could follow it up with this one, you could still get an extra damage and a slightly easier attacking. Domain, here it comes. Now this card is mad. This is where some proper control comes in. After the last power step in the next round, so you kind of have to play this round 1 or 2, the players roll off and the winner picks the territory. Deal 1 damage to each fighter in that territory. The effect persists until the end of the next round or until the domain gambit is played. So a couple of interesting things with this. One is that you've got to play it until, you've got to play it, so it's no good in turn 3. And you've got to play it, then you've got to go the whole of the next turn without playing any more of your domains if you want it to take effect. Or, of course, you could psych your opponent out and then play a domain right at the end after they've moved somewhere they don't necessarily want to be. Really interesting mind games going on with that. Puncturing Ice Shards. Choose a fighter with 1 hex of a hazard hex. Deal 1 damage to that chosen fighter. Then pick an opponent. That opponent chooses a fighter within 1 hex of a hazard hex or a feature token and then deals 1 damage to that chosen fighter. So a bit of quid pro quo, tit for tat potentially there for puncturing Ice Shards. And then Re-emergence. So interestingly, although that is a domain, it doesn't actually have any persisting. So you just play it and then that's it. So it will cancel some of the domains, but it won't actually linger like the other domains do. And then the last domain is Unstable Footing. After a fighter makes a super action, stagger that fighter. So basically anybody who anybody's charging is going to stagger them. If that fighter's already staggered, which they might be, deal 1 damage to that fighter. This effect persists until the round until another domain card is played. So again, you've got potential there to, if you can go around staggering your opponent, you can really mess them up, stop them charging you, or take damage if they do charge you. What else have we got? We've got Engulfing Shadow. Pick an empty hex, scatter 2 from that hex, roll a magic dice for each fighter within 1 hex of of the hex at the end of the chain. On a roll of a swirly, a focus, deal 1 damage to that fighter, otherwise stagger them. So again, you've got ways of adding stagger. Re-emergence, pick a friendly fighter's Rimewyrm by its domain card. That is persisting and or in your power discard pile. Return that card to your hand. If you return the persisting domain card to your hand in this way, it no longer persists. So it does have to be a persisting. So you can't take the one that just does damage, but you have got options to return it to your hand. Maybe do the effects again, or avoid the effects for your turn, put it back and give the effects back for your opponent's turn, which I quite like. The right bait, this is a really nice card. Choose a friendly fighter and an enemy fighter, each of which is adjacent to the other chosen fighter. Deal 1 damage to the chosen enemy fighter. If either chosen fighter is within 1 hex of a hazard hex, stagger the chosen enemy fighter. So again, you've got massive potential for damage and staggering there with the right bait. Just pure luck. You have to pick one. You can either play this after the attack dice are rolled to resolve a scatter, and you can choose a hammer, or you can change one result to a hammer, could be useful, or play this after a friendly fighter is dealt precisely 1 damage. That fighter is not dealt damage unless the damage would take the fighter out of action. So that's quite nice. It's really interesting. You can change the result to a hammer. That card, potentially, put it in a goblin deck. I don't know where the rest of it goes with the goblin deck, but you've got a hammer for a stirk straight away. Upgrades then, let's have a look what the upgrades are. Advancing Juggernaut. So this fighter can't be staggered. Gives you some advantages from some of the other cards. Use this after this fighter ends a move action in enemy territory. The move action cannot be part of a super action to give them a guard. So they basically run in, go on guard. You have got to have some way you've got everybody in enemy territory, so maybe that's a good card to have. Otherwise, I'm not quite sure. I'm never really keen on charging into enemy territory and then just standing there and doing nothing. I think you are on guard, so potentially good. The Boots of Warding. This fighter cannot be dealt damage by power cards or lethal hexes. Could be really useful. So this deck, as we go through it, it's about manipulating the environment to do little bits of ping damage here and there, and then protecting a lot of them damages both sides, but this is protecting your own fighters from the potential ping damage. Earth-shattering Tread. While this fighter has 1 or more charge and or move tokens, other fighters treat hexes adjacent to this fighter as lethal hexes, in addition to other hex types. So again, careful positioning here could really mess up your opponent, or at least do them some damage. Inured to Hardship. When you give this upgrade to a fighter, heal 1 that fighter. If the fighter is large, give that fighter a guard token instead. So again, you're recognising that heal can be oppressive for large fighters. They can only go on guard. And as a reaction at the start of the round, heal 1 this fighter, unless this fighter is large. So again, they can't keep getting used to it, but a smaller fighter maybe can. Have to wait and see. You've got to get on early and they've got to not die. Like an Avalanche. Can't be given to a large fighter. Reaction. Use this after a domain card is discarded. Remove this fighter's move and or charge tokens. You can see why it can't be given to a large fighter. Again, could be super useful in certain circumstances if you've got a good fighter who's charged and you want to use them again. The Master of Disaster, the Master of Disaster, the man with the plan. A little goblin there, I think it's Zarbag. Use this after a domain card is discarded. Push this fighter 1 hex, or choose an enemy fighter, stagger the chosen fighter. So again, a bit of staggering going on. Sprinting Fiend. This fighter can make the following super action. Full sprint. This fighter makes 2 move actions, then stagger this fighter and give this fighter 1 charge token. Not sure how useful that is. Very rarely need double move, but maybe if you're combining it with some objective play, maybe it could be useful. Or you want to get somebody into the end zone. Thunderstomp. Can't be given to a large fighter. Got to be careful with this deck if giving it to large fighters. Scatter X, where X is the fighter's wound characteristic. Can see why you can't give it to a large fighter. Deal 1 damage to each fighter in the chain, then break this card. Could be useful with the hammer ploy. I'm feeling like Stormcast might quite like this deck. Tough Enough. Again, cannot be given to a large fighter. This fighter cannot be dealt precisely 1 damage unless the damage would to be taking this fighter out of action, would take this fighter out of action. So similar to the ploy that did the same sort of thing. And up for a fight, +1 dice to this fighter's attack actions if there is a persisting domain card. So that is it. That is the Rimewyrm's Bite. What do you think? I think it's really interesting. I've read through it a few times. Reading it out loud, I get a bit more of a feel for it. I kind of feel like it would lend itself to Elite Warbands. I feel like the Stormcast could be quite good with it. You've got some really interesting control options, but you can't just sit back. It's not one of those, oh, I'm going to just sit at the back of the board and make you come at me. You have to get, I think you have to get up in somebody's face. The effects tend to be like adjacent, or you can score glory by being in your opponent's territory and things like that. So I think it's really going to change the game. I think the two, as I said already, the two decks are like nothing else we've really seen in Underworlds, with the possible exception of the Void Curse deck. And I think it's taking the game in really interesting ways. And maybe, like I say, it might bring things like, maybe the vampires might be quite good, maybe Drom could be good. Probably this is all some way to probably go, no, it's much better than Horde Warbands. I feel like Horde Warbands have got some potential, but you've got a lot more things to think about with more fighters, and they're quite weak as well. So some of the extraneous ping damage flying around could be detrimental to them. So Pete and I will be playing with the Wintermaw box. We'll be playing the Warbands out of the box with their Rivals decks, and then probably adding these Rivals decks. I'm just playing Rivals games on Wednesday night, Wednesday the 3rd of April. Do come and check that out. We'll be playing live. Come and let us know what you think of the Wintermaw box. The components I think are really nice. The artwork has changed slightly. Two really interesting relic decks. Two really interesting rival decks. The jury's out for me on the Warbands yet, but we'll see on Wednesday. I haven't played with them yet, so we'll see how they go. But do let us know. Do like and subscribe and all that jazz, and we'll see you somewhere in the Wintermaw.